what is, right? Just a good football game. All right. Certainly look to build off of last week's performance, both offensively and defensively. We know our opponent very well. Have a great deal of respect for Navy and Ken Niumatalolo and what he has done this year in particular. Really just put together a really good football team in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. Malcolm Perry is a dynamic offensive player. I think he's top 15 in the country in rushing, and he's the #1 rushing quarterback in the country. A dynamic, explosive player. Last year he played slot for us, didn't play quarterback. Now back at the quarterback position, he's precise, very, very secure with the football. He's a point guard, distributing, making really good decisions. Very difficult to defend. Obviously, the triple option, they lead the country in rushing offense. I'm telling you probably everything that you already know. Just a very difficult team to defend. We know them well, and each game is a very difficult game because you're preparing only 2 or 3 days for a very, very good and efficient offense. Defensively, they've done a great job. The changes that they've made, I think what's impressive, I think the top offenses that they've played, they've kept them to over 100 yards less than their normal averages. Their rush defense is outstanding. They've been very aggressive. So, from a transformational standpoint, their defense is so much better at everything that they do, from coverage to getting after the quarterback, tackling. And again, it shows statistically in terms of where they are and how they're playing. So, really good football team, deserving of being nationally ranked, and will be a great challenge for us as we prepare for them this week. So, again, another clash against very, very well coached football team in Navy. That will open it up to questions.
Brian, I think after the Navy game last year, I'm paraphrasing, you mentioned something about Drew White coming in for Tranquil, that he was a guy that maybe had gotten lost on the depth chart at some point. What did he show you in that game that changed your mind about him, and how did he go from just being a guy that was good against triple option to being good against everything?
Yeah, well, I think everybody gets their opportunity and chance, and when you get it, you need to make the best of it. And I think he made the best of his one opportunity and his chance, and that was his one opportunity. Option football requires a discipline. It requires a knowledge and awareness, and those instincts obviously serve you well at that position, the middle linebacker position. And so I think it was a glimpse of things that were to come. He obviously was set back with an injury in the spring, but he fought through that and put himself in a position where that game was not just a cameo for him. It was something that was going to be more of what we've come to see this year, and that is really solid play at the middle linebacker position.
I want to ask you about Jameer Jones. I think in high school he played a little bit of quarterback.
Yeah.
You guys initially had him as an inside linebacker, knowing he'd grow out of that.
Yeah.
Has his production surprised you, given how little defensive end he's played?
No, he's probably, and I think Mike Elston would tell you this too if he was standing here. Performance versus trust, and he ranks up there in the top corner of both. In other words, trust in assignment and doing what he's asked to do, and performance. He's about as good as we have on our football team. He's just a really smart football player, assignment sound. A couple of weeks ago against Virginia Tech, he was asked to stop the outside zone play against the quarterback and at the same time hold on to the tight end on the throwback. That's a tough assignment. You know, you get caught up in the wash there and you forget about him. But we trusted him so much that he could do that dual assignment. And that's how we feel about him.
Last one from me. You moved Houston Griffith earlier in the season to safety. You've got 3 really good safeties. I'm sure this maybe is with an eye towards next year. But
Sure.
Since we don't see him in games as much because you have the 3 really good performers, what's that transition been like? Do you feel like he's found a home?
Yeah, we do. We really like what we see from him in practice. And, you know, he got a chance to step on the field and make a nice play on 3rd down for us. And it's a week where you're going to see a little bit more of him. You know, the safeties are really stressed in this offense. You can't just get by on 2. We tried to do that last year. You know, we got up on Navy, but we got a little tired at the safety position playing 2. So you're going to see a lot more depth played at that position, and that's going to require Houston to play for us this Saturday as well.
Brian, we have 2 high schools around here who run something very similar to Navy's offense, and they're still.
I'd rather play them.
I'm sure you would. What makes this offense so effective?
Well, I mean, they've seen everything. First of all, their in-game adjustments, the ability, and certainly the coaching. And, you know, I mean, Jasper and Ken have seen everything. They can make adjustments to what you're trying to do in a split second. Not that the coaches at the high school level can't. They've seen it all as well. But, you know, you've got the best and brightest, you know, that are playing at the academy that can make some quick adjustments in-game, at halftime. So they're not going to be fooled by what they see. Secondly, they're generally going to have an outstanding quarterback that is going to be, you know, able to stress you in so many areas and get, you know, the ball on the perimeter and force you to defend him. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about the quarterback, how do you defend him? You know, really, you have to play a lot of cover 0 against him. If you're not, it's a slow march to the end zone because they certainly do a great job of having a quarterback that can continue to make yards each and every down. So I think the reliance on having smart players that can make in-game adjustments. I think the fact that the quarterback-driven offense allows them to really make it difficult on you to defend them. And again, experience at the coaching staff.
So is the quarterback or the fullback the toughest stop in stopping that offense?
Well, I think it's all together, you know, in itself the most difficult because it strikes on, you know, such a wide front. You have to defend inside and out. But I think, you know, when you have a guy like a Malcolm Perry, you know, it's the quarterback, obviously, that makes this thing very, very dangerous.
Last one from me. In the past, you had somebody like a Greer Martini who was almost an option specialist, and Eric mentioned Drew White. Do you see Drew White kind of being the Greer Martini of this defense?
You know, I think it's going to be a collective deal for us. I mean, we're going to have to play really well in all facets. The fullback they've got depth there at that position. They've got 2 very good fullbacks. But it requires all 11 players. If you're not attentive to all areas, you're going to have some problems. So it's not really just one player. I think you're going to have great effort from all those players.
Brian, over here. What do you remember about Gilman playing against you a few years ago, and how he performed?
Extremely active, really good tackler. Somebody that you know, for us, got our attention immediately, and you know, I think that's, you know, when you're playing a team like Navy, and you know, you're trying to make sure that you stay, you know, up with them in terms of scoring points. Anybody that stands out on that defensive side, you know, becomes, you know, a problem for you because you got to work away from them, or you got to have them in your game plan. And he was a guy that, you know, you didn't want, you know, to throw to his side. You wanted to try to work away from him, and so consequently he was noticeable.
Second question, from the historical standpoint, what you know of the series, are there things that you enjoy about playing Navy every year?
I think just the respect, part of it in terms of who we're going against. Leaders of our country, the Naval Academy, the coaching staff, the players. That to me is what's great about this game. The history and tradition behind it and why this game is being played today because of the history and tradition of this game. Those are the things that stand out for me.
Brian, to your left, just talking to some people that cover Navy, they mentioned that they had gone away almost from the triple option last season, and that they had moved back to it this year with Perry. Does that challenge you in terms of looking at their personnel? And it seems like they didn't really even run the true triple the last couple of years, and now they're back at what they do best.
No, I think we're clearly prepared and identify who they are as an offense. They actually do a couple of different things that they didn't do last year that are not triple option. They run a counter play that they didn't run last year that's not triple option. So they're back to their roots, but they can still do some things like toss sweep, get the ball outside that are not part of their triple. But you have to stop the basic tenets of their offense, and that is triple option.
Does the bye week, is that something where you dig deeper, knowing they have an extra week to kind of go back into the bag of tricks that Ken has?
We've had that the last, I think this is our 6th team that we've played that's had a bye week. So, we can't come up with any more than what we need to handle ourselves and then make adjustments as we go.
And you mentioned the big uptick in their defense from the last couple
Yeah.
of years. Is that coordinator driven, bringing in Newberry from, I guess he was recommended from Army's head coach, and it's the new scheme?
Yeah. Well, scheme is definitely part of this, but they've got some veteran players up front. They're big, they're physical. You've got 2 or 3 300-pounders that are tough to move up front. They're getting some sacks off the edge from some skilled players that are part of a very good scheme on 2nd and 3rd down. So part of it's scheme, part of it is they got some good players with some experience. I like their safeties. They could play anywhere in the country, both of them. Matter of fact, we recruited one of them when Mike Elko was here. It's a good football team. Yeah.
Coach, you announced yesterday that Aquara is out for the season, and that means that the game on Saturday was his last game ever,
Yeah.
in blue and gold. What kind of impact did he leave on the Notre Dame football program?
Well, I think he brought a lot of notoriety to our defensive line in terms of development and how you can develop. He came in 210, 215 pounds and developed into a explosive, powerful player. So, player development, you can come in here and develop as a defensive lineman. And, I think a lot of that credit goes to him and our strength and conditioning program. But I think it says a lot about him and his want and desire to be the best he could be. And all the credit should go to him and our staff.
Now, Chase Claypool's battled through some injuries this season, and he still had some pretty remarkable catches. How impressive is that, considering what he's been through this year?
Yeah, he's a warrior. I mean, he just has that mindset that when he's out on the football field, that's his domain. He just loves to play. He's a great competitor, and he's going to do whatever he can to help his football team win, and that's why he's respected by his teammates.
Brian, you mentioned Malcolm Perry played slot back last year. Do you wish he was still playing slot back? Is that what you're saying?
I am. I don't think that's going to happen.
You mentioned, I know yesterday you talked a little bit about the defensive end positions now without Aquara. But if you could, again, address that a little bit. You have your 2 big ends, pretty much locked in. So are you looking at a rotation of maybe 3
Well, Ade, you know, obviously is a guy that, you know, gives us that versatility at that position. He's long, he's athletic. He was extremely disruptive on Saturday, hand up in the face of the quarterback virtually all the time. You know, Ovi now is going to play, and he's a young player that we have, you know, a great deal of confidence in. So now he becomes part of that rotation. But it'd be Ade and Ovi is the two guys now that you see a lot more of on the field.
And Foskey has played 3 games.
That's correct.
And so,
You probably don't see him this weekend.
okay.
Yeah, you probably don't see him this weekend. We try to hold him in back to see where he fits best.
More
you know,
conventional offense.
Yeah, exactly.
And Justin Adamiola.
Yeah, he's really played well for us. Both Eddie Molas have played really solid football for us, and they would be counted in that as well. Absolutely.
Javon McKinley really flashed against the 2 non-Power 5 conference teams. Where does he need to get better in his game? How do you see that?
Well, you know, he hasn't played a lot of, you know, football. And so, you know, I think, you know, this is his opportunity to continue to grow. I mean, I think anything that we can get from him this year is a bonus. And, yeah, certainly we would like him to continue to grow and step up into, you know, a guy that we can get some more plays out of. But, you know, he did some good things for us. He was really physical in the run game. He opened up some big runs for us on Saturday. And I'm not here to, you know, wave the flag for every guy that plays for us. But, you know, he did some really good things. He did some dirty work for us that doesn't get a lot of recognition. But, you know, he has to continue to grow, but this is his first year playing. And, yeah, we'd like to see him make some more plays. He would like to as well, but I think he's on that track.
I think 2 of those blocks were big plays. You had
They
Jimmy
were.
Smith
He unleashed 2 big plays for us, yeah.
Last thing, the way the first half of the Virginia Tech game ended in bad fashion for you, I was wondering if you were kind of getting flashbacks about that this past Saturday when you were up 21-0, almost had a chance to be up 4 touchdowns, and next thing you know, they're threatening to pull within 1 touchdown.
It was different, you know. You know, that was kind of an unfortunate call. It really wasn't a holding penalty. They just the center judge was obstructed in his view. He didn't see it. The defensive end actually tripped, and he thought it was so. It kind of just had a different feel. It's kind of more unfortunate than you know, not blocking a middle linebacker. So I don't think anybody had the same feel in that situation. It was more unfortunate than it was anything else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to follow up on Foskey. When you have somebody of that stature,
Yeah.
and you know he certainly passes the eye test and all, how difficult is it as a staff to limit it to 4 games? Because if he is as good as you believe he is there even going to be a 5th year?
Well, generally speaking, there's not a 5th year for most of these guys. But that doesn't mean we have, you know, carte blanche to just throw a guy out there and take that year away. So I still think it's a decision that we want to be, we want to take their best interests as, for me, I think it's difficult to just throw a kid in there for a 6th game, you know, or 5th game, and not consider the possibility for a red shirt, even though the probability is that they're not going to have that. So it's just my way of doing business. It's just my business plan. Others may do it differently. That's just the way that I've kind of erred towards doing it.
But you don't tell them beforehand because you don't want to take away the competitive edge.
No, we don't. But when we get up to the number, you know, when we're right there, then I'll have the conversation. And they asked, obviously, too. They want to know, Coach, where are we going with this? And generally, they all know now that I'm probably not going to play them unless they're a guy like Kyle Hamilton, you know, that is definitely impacting from day one.
Any update on Brayden Lindsey and Joe Wilkins, what you saw yesterday in the weight room and where they stand?
Yeah, they'll lift today. If they go through lifting today and are clean, you know, Wilkins is a little different. He has a soft tissue injury, so we'll continue to progress him. Brayden Lindsey is a little bit different. He's had some fatigue issues. They have not been concussion related. He has, you know, we've had him on a mega wave, which his central nervous system is a bit depleted. I think he's going through, you know, long year of academics and football. We want to get him back up to where he's full go, ready to go at 100%. He's doing better. If he's ready to go, we'll certainly get him up and running this week.
He had another issue early in the year. Was that related to it?
No, he had a concussion earlier in the year.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there like a greater monitoring now of him as to where he stands, where there's maybe even extra precautions taken?
No, I think we want to be careful with all of our players. We monitor anybody that's not, you know, at 100%. You know, they fill out questionnaires every day that have to be turned in by 2 o'clock. We monitor all of our players, and if they're not right, you know, we have Dr. Lively here that is checking all of our players, and you know, the care is first and foremost. If we don't think they're right, we're not going to put them in a practice situation.
Thank you.
Brian,
Yeah.
Gilman, off the field as a leader, did you have any inkling when you brought him here that he had that capability? And he's several times now addressed a whole group or the full defense. And as someone who addresses the full group often, how rare is that for a young man to be?
Yeah, he just likes to talk a lot. I mean,
He seems to be pretty good at it.
he's good at it. No, we knew that when he came in and he couldn't play in that first year. We have developmental lifts, and those are lifts on Friday morning when we're traveling or even at home, and they're early morning lifts. And he was always part of those developmental lifts and those travel lifts, and he was a vocal leader in those. So we had a glimpse of what he was going to be like. He wasn't going to be a guy that was off to the side. He was going to be very vocal. He was going to be very instrumental in helping us build the leadership base, and so we had a pretty good idea of that. Yeah.
Coach, obviously you don't get a lot of time this week to prepare for the offense that you're going to face. How much time do you devote either on your bye week or even as far back as camp in August to laying down principles that you know you're only going to need this Saturday?
Well, we've done a lot of work that's residual work towards that end, and certainly that work began in earnest a couple of years ago in terms of how we recruited some walk-ons and what we did in spring and summer to keep us in a at least a prepared state as we went into these weeks of preparation for Navy. So made those decisions a few years ago. Doesn't necessarily mean you have an advantage in any way, but it does when you come into Navy Week. It doesn't feel like, oh my God, here we go. We've got a pretty solid plan. It just needs to be refined and developed during the week.
Can you elaborate on what some of those things are, or do you feel like that puts you at a disadvantage by revealing that?
I think we have some drill work that we think, look, the hardest thing is play to the speed of what you're going to get. And so how do you develop that with a group that is not as efficient in running that at the highest level? So we think we've come up with some things that allow us to play fast enough that we can duplicate that model when we step on the field.
Your team seems to have bounced back nicely over the last couple of weeks after hearing some noise and maybe potentially having their confidence rattled. Where do you feel like they are right now in terms of where their heads are at and moving forward? Do you like where they're trending?
Well, there's really good leadership, not only amongst the captains, but there's real accountability amongst all of the players, and that means that it shows up during the week to a standard that has been set in how they prepare. And they know that you reap what you sow, and that means if they work really hard during the week, if they put in the time, if they hold each other accountable to that end, that it's going to pay off for them. And so where are they at? They're at a high level of mental toughness in that they hold each other to a level and a standard that has allowed them to continue to work towards getting better as a football team. And as long as they stay in that mindset, they'll be pretty good.
Brian, Mishawaka football has responded and said they might be able to fit you on the schedule.
Oh.
Would you rather play them?
Are they still playing?
Yes.
They are?
Yeah. Actually, all the option teams are still playing.
Thursday would be fine. Thursday, let them know.
We're 25 minutes into your press conference. You haven't been asked once about Ian Book. Little different than the last couple weeks. What does that say about maybe where he came against you last week?
Well, I think that there was some significant progress made, and maybe, maybe just he got back to the starting line for many people that were viewing him. But I think, for Ian, playing the quarterback position requires, to eliminate a lot of the clutter that goes along with the position. I think he finally did that, and he just went and played quarterback at Notre Dame. And it was nice to see. I was happy for him. I think he just needs to continue to do that, go play, have fun, enjoy it, and I think good things will happen to him.
How critical is his play this week? Because you know that possessions will be limited, and if you guys don't maximize them, you could be in trouble.
No doubt. I mean, I think it's not just him. He's going to have to get a great performance again from, all of our guys. I mean, look, Ian Book could put the ball where it needs to be. It's got to be caught. The routes have got to be run efficiently. We've got to block well up front. So, yes, he's got to play like he's capable of playing, but he's got to get the supporting cast to do what it did last week as well.
I believe Jafar Armstrong was targeted in the passing game for as many carries as he had against Duke. As some of the younger backs develop, and obviously some of the other receivers are hurt, could you see him having more of a role as a receiver going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure it out, right? I mean, he's a young man that, played receiver. We like his ability to catch the football. Obviously, he has that, role right now as both a running back and a guy that we can put in as a receiver. But I still think he's a guy that has a dual capability for us. And, as we kind of go through the year, we're kind of trying to identify where he fits and helps our football team the best.
And how is, I guess, Tony Jones, since he came back from the injury, is he back to 100%? Or
Yeah, I think he was, kind of getting back to where he was. He wasn't certainly the Tony Jones that we saw running against USC, but I think you're going to see a guy that is going to be back to 100% this weekend.
And then lastly, at this time of year, a lot of other, I guess, like top-tier teams are, have FCS teams on their schedule, maybe a little lighter team down the stretch, and you finish the year with, 5 Power 5 teams, and then Navy, who's obviously ranked. Do you see that as a disadvantage, or maybe even just an advantage for the other programs?
Well, we're not going to play any FCS teams here, so I've lost that argument a long time ago. It wasn't even up for discussion, so I don't even think it was an argument. Yeah, I mean, it's a daunting schedule, but that's why you have to have a difficult schedule here at Notre Dame to hold the test up against other conferences. Last year, we were like a on-Broadway play. We opened up in a theater near you. I mean, we were all over the country. So, I mean, it's the nature of our schedule. We have to prepare for it. We have to train our guys the right way. So when it's time to come to November, we're not worn out mentally or physically.
During the broadcast, the announcers talked about Chris Fink sort of battling through some injuries, and now he was only just now sort of getting back to where he was. What were the last 2 months like for him? I'm not sure that sort of his medical status was something that we talked to you much about.
Just some nagging injuries, shoulder, ribs, leg, and he just fought through them. He just wasn't 100%. He was giving everything that he has. He's a captain that's not going to pull himself out of any action. But, you know, you could tell just this past week he was back to running at a high level, cuts in and out of his breaks. You know, you just kind of sensed, and I did. I actually alluded to the ACC guys when they were talking about Claypoole and other guys. Don't forget about 10. He's going to have a big game, and he did, because I saw that during the week. He's feeling good. I mean, he's in a good place, and I think he'll contribute strongly for us down the stretch.
It's a pretty big picture question, but maybe it ties into sort of the fifth year, not fifth year, maybe the academic fatigue for somebody like Brayden Lindsey. But on your radio show last week, you mentioned sort of the 3.5-year graduation track. At a place like this, with all the other things these players have to do, like, why is that the smart thing to do?
You're well above my pay grade on that. You know, they take, when they come in, they take, you know, a pretty heavy load in the summer. Each summer, to keep them here on campus, the way the curriculum is set up, it requires them to take a very tight offering that's available to them. One thing we don't have a lot of here is 1-credit classes. So you're taking 3-credit classes for your 2 summer sessions. So minimally, you're adding 6 every semester at the minimum. So it starts to add up. You can figure out the numbers, then put you in a position where you're graduating a lot sooner.
I mean, is there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually 3 of them that I know of for sure.
Is there a tweak to that, do you think, that you guys could work on?
Yeah, I think there's always tweaks to it. But there are so many moving pieces to this that, you know, we're certainly, not all of our guys are 4.0s and 35s. And then we're asking them to graduate in 3.5 years. You can see how there are sometimes you wonder, that question has some legs. That's all I could say.